Good afternoon, everyone. It looks like we're live here on Facebook. I am McKenna Jordan. I'm the owner of Murder by the Book here in Houston, and I'm very excited to be joined today by Stuart Turton and Ragnar Jonasson. How are you, gentlemen?
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Yes, really good.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce the two of them, and then I'm going to leave them to chat for a bit. If you have any questions in the comments, or if you have any questions, put them in the comments and I'll come back on in a little bit to get those to the authors. Questions for either, I'm sure, would be welcome. Also, I wanted to mention, we have copies of both authors' books in stock all the time. We can get you any of their books. We also have signed book plates for The Devil in the Dark Water, which is the new Stuart Turton. Stuart Turton is an English internationally best-selling author and journalist. Turton's debut novel, The Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, won the first novel award at the 2018 Costa Book Awards and has sold in 28 languages. He's here today to talk with us about The Devil in the Dark Water. Ragnar Jonasson was born in Iceland and works as an attorney at law and writer in Reykjavik. Before embarking on a writing career, Ragnar translated 14 Agatha Christie novels into Icelandic. His own internationally best-selling series include the Hulda series and the Dark Iceland series. Ragnar is the co-founder of the Reykjavik International Crime Writing Festival, Iceland Noir. He lives in Reykjavik with his wife and two daughters, and his latest book is The Mist, which we are temporarily out of, but more copies are on order. And he has graciously agreed to join Stuart today to lead the conversation. So as I said, I'm going to leave them to it. You guys have a great talk, and I'll be back on in a little bit. Thank you.
Thanks, McKenna. Nobody should ever have to follow Ragnar's biography. That's just simply not fair.
So how are you, Stu, and where are you now?
I'm at home, mate. I'm in like everybody else, I'm just trapped in my house. So you know what this is like. Normally, when the book comes out, you are on the road for a month and a half or something, then the US book tour follows on. And it just hasn't happened this year. I've just had to sit at home and do events like this, and it's been kind of nice. It's kind of been a bit of a guilty pleasure, actually. What about you? What are you?
I'm in Reykjavik. I'm at home as well.
Oh, nice.
I mean, yeah, no one can travel anymore.
No, I should mention to everybody at home that Ragnar is the busiest man I've ever met in my entire life. You are never at home. Your wife must be loving it.
Yeah, I've never been at home for so long in years, actually. So it's it's quite strange, but you have to try and enjoy it. We are approaching the annual Christmas book season in Iceland. As you may know, every book is more or less published just before Christmas in Iceland. So people can give them as presents.
Oh, that's a lot of books to choose from. Like, because we've had this fixture pile up because of the pandemic recently. And yeah. I think on the day Devil came out in the UK, 350 other books came out on that day. And it was just this nightmarish. Like 25 former best-selling authors just all turned up on the same day. It's incredible. Great time to be a reader, though.
Yeah, I think so. And, we're all readers as well. So I'm really looking forward to sitting down with some good books.
What's on your pile? Is that an unfair question?
Oh, what's on my pile? I was reading the new Robert Crais book, actually.
Oh, yeah. Is that
V2?
Yeah.
I just got that. And then there was one by a woman called Agnes Rava from Norway. So these are the two that sort of... And I'm looking forward to the new Sophie Hannah book, the Poirot one.
Yeah. She's great. Everything she writes has got something in it, hasn't it? Because the same as me, right? Massive Agatha Christie fans. This is how we first sort of met and chatted over a mutual love of Agatha Christie. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of Agatha Christie in this. I only have this one at home because the other one I just have on an ebook. I'm still waiting for the hardcover to be sent to me, but it's on its way. Things take a lot of time from into Iceland now. Like books are delayed, but I got the ebook over Easter, so I had that for a while. But I brought this one up just to show people. This is like one of the when I read this one, it was like one of the best original mysteries I'd ever read. And
thanks,
so I was really looking forward to the next one, which most certainly did not disappoint. I mean,
oh, thank you.
The two fantastic books. So, when did you start a new one? Just right after you finished this, or?
I tried, yeah.
Yeah.
But I had the newborn baby at the same time.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Oh yeah, do you remember? I was just crying on your shoulder probably at a party. It was. You can do nothing when you've got a newborn baby, and you can't possibly really know that until you have a newborn baby, is what I discovered. So I tried to write Devil. I spent a year trying to write Devil and being stubborn about it with, a newborn baby, getting 2 hours sleep a night, writing nothing coherent, no good pages, like one page would not follow the next page. And I did that for a year. And by the time the year was over, I had 170,000 words, and I threw out almost all of them after that first year because they were just garbage. It was just awful, mate. It was really, really terrible stuff. So I think we kept about 16 or 17,000 words of it and started again after that first year. So I think this book's took 2 years to write, but probably actually closer to a year and a half.
Okay, yeah. That's horrible to throw out like so many words. It's unimaginable.
It was, well, to be honest, if I'd kept them in, we wouldn't be having this chat. No other author would ever look me in the eye ever again. It would not have been reviewed. I think people would have been too kind to give it even a 1 star if I'd kept it. But it was like, you know what it's like, because you have your first draft, and your first draft is just the bricks of the house, right? You need it to build the house, but that's definitely not the house, the first draft. So my first draft was unimaginably bad, but there was lots in there. It was very useful showing me what the book definitely wasn't going to be. But there was stuff in there where I could see it pointed the direction of what it could be. And it was that it would need to be on this boat, and it would need to be more of a locked room mystery, because it was much more epic in the first draft. It had a big chunk was set in Batavia, which is where the story starts. A big chunk was set on kind of where the book goes. So it had these different stages. It just didn't hold together as a mystery. And at heart, I wanted it to be a mystery. So that's what the later draft sort of focused on, making it actually a compelling. And that's what we realized, right? Like Agatha Christie wrote 2 or 3 of these a year. And I don't know how I just can't, every time I sit down to write one, I don't know how she did that, because writing a mystery is the hardest thing in the world.
So did you have the mystery all mapped out before you started this one, or from start to end? Or?
Yeah. So I plan for 3 months. And then I do planning and researching for 3 months, and I don't write a word of it until it's all planned out meticulously in detail. But that's kind of what I wrote the first draft to. And then when I threw that away, I realized the plan was as flawed as the first draft. So I actually went back and redrafted it all over again, knowing what I know now. And that was brilliant, because I think that would be very useful going forward. I want to ask you about this, actually. You must plan your books, right? Like, you must plan them out before.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I couldn't start a novel without knowing how it ends. I mean, because it's all about the narrative and the big picture.
Yeah, but
for me anyway.
And me, but do you plan? I can't plan characters, is what I've discovered. I can plan the plot and know how I get all the way through, but I can't plan the characters. I have to find the characters as I go along, and sometimes that means changing the plot to fit what I now know about the characters. Do you have that problem?
I tend to start with sort of structured characters, but I think I know what you mean. I mean, they do change as you progress, and of course, so that they usually add on more color as as the story progresses, and and things change. But usually, for me, at least, the plot more or less stays the same.
Yeah, my plot stayed the same, except the bits of it. The characters who were doing certain bits of the investigation, they changed. So there's a female character in this book called Sarah, and she had nowhere near as much to do in the first couple of drafts of it. She kind of forced her way into the story as I went along, which was really surprising. That didn't happen to me on Seven Deaths, because that was so locked down. Whereas this one felt a bit looser, maybe because of the way I edited it and the way I drafted it, and she kept getting more to do. And I'd love that to happen again. I don't know if it will. I don't know if it was just a one-off, but that was a really interesting thing to experience.
So for this one, for the old one, I mean, this is pure Agatha Christie, I would say.
Yeah.
You agree with that, or?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's my pure Agatha Christie. I love her. I want to write one of her books.
The new one, is that like, is that Conan Doyle or what's?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think 7 Deaths was, or 7.5 Deaths for the US was straight up. I love Agatha Christie. I'd like to write an Agatha Christie style mystery. And I was very reverent to the plot tropes that she used and her style of writing and the kind of characters that she would have in her novels. Like I tried to bring all of that in and kind of spin it. This one, Devil, I don't have the same relationship with Conan Doyle. I like Conan Doyle's adventures. I don't particularly like Sherlock Holmes as a character. I think he's a tool. And I really like Watson. I really like Lestrade. I really like the world they inhabit.
Yeah.
And I think when I started writing my own, to put all this in context, the first thing I had was the boat. I knew I wanted to write on a boat. I knew I wanted to be in this period, and I knew it wanted to be a kind of haunted, demon-y boat, right? I had that. And when I started thinking about that, that felt very Sherlock Holmes to me. That was the very first thing that happened. It felt like a Sherlock Holmes kind of mystery and setting. So I wanted to create a character that had that feel to it. And I wanted to play with the deductive method of investigation because it's very different to what Christie was doing, like the way he dashes about and he's reliant on finding these tiny little clues and making massive deductive leaps from them. I wanted to see if I could do that. That's what I started. And then as it got into it, it became much more about, okay, well, what are the things I didn't like about Sherlock Holmes' stories and Sherlock Holmes himself? And I started messing about with them and creating a story that kind of fixed that for me, if that makes sense. So I don't like Sherlock Holmes, so I write a Sherlock Holmes style character who gets humbled at the very beginning of the novel and is kind of taken out of the mystery. I elevate all the sidekicks into positions of prominence, like above him, and put him in the background. And I made sure that nobody was a dimwit. Like in Sherlock Holmes stories, there's always like characters, everyone who isn't Sherlock Holmes, apart from his brother Mycroft, is an idiot. Everybody. And it really annoys me, Ragnar, all the time I read the novels. You've got like Watson's a doctor. He's a war hero. He's a very clever man who everyone treats like he's an imbecile. Lestrade is the head of the foremost policing unit in the world, also treated like a buffoon. It's very, very strange to me. So I made sure that wasn't the case in this. I made sure that every character was clever and sort of had a plan and was after something and was very good at getting it. And that just made it a more interesting book for me to write. So yeah, it's Sherlock Holmes, but it's almost a criticism of Sherlock Holmes rather than an outright adoration like 7 Deaths was.
So what's the next one, next author you would tackle?
Well, it would have been, I've accidentally sort of gone through, so Agatha Christie's were the first batch of books I ever read back to back and just loved and just wanted more of them. And then I moved on to Conan Doyle after that. So I've kind of repeated that. As a writer, I've repeated my reading trajectory.
Yeah.
But after that, it was Stephen King. So I moved from Conan Doyle onto Stephen King. And I think there's a bit of Stephen King in this book. So I think I've already leapt on to my next. And I would never want to write horror books. I don't know about you. I just find something enjoyable in mysteries. I like the challenge of writing a mystery. I can't ever imagine myself writing a straight up piece of horror. I don't just as a writer, I don't think that'd be interesting to me. What do you think? That's not to degrade the genre. It's just not something that would interest me as a writer.
No, I agree. I mean, I love reading mysteries, and I grew up reading Golden Age mysteries from the US, from the UK, and from New Zealand even. So that's what I write because that's what I love to read.
Yeah.
So like horror isn't my go-to thing.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think I will stay away from that as well.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I get asked, and you must do all the time as well, because I think people think that you write a book and then your publisher just says to you, this is all you can ever write. And there's a bit more freedom than that. It's kind of, most authors do kind of choose their lane a little bit. They're like, this is what I enjoy doing. This is the work I like. And there becomes a familiarity with it as well, the way it works, the beats of it, how to write them. Because you're like 9 million books into your career at this point, alongside your millions of other jobs. Do you still find each book the actual planning, the plotting, the writing, do you find each book still a challenge, or is it still something you can come to now and just be like, yep, I know exactly how this is going to work?
It's more, it's more of a pleasure than a challenge. I mean, I have so many ideas that I want to actually get on a piece of paper, but usually I stick with one book at a time. Although during this lockdown last spring, I was tempted to work on like 2 books at a time just for fun. I don't know what will happen to the other one, but I just had like all of a sudden too much time on my hands. But no, I mean, it's just pure pleasure. And I think there is an advantage in like writing originally for a small market like Iceland, is that there is no one really, looking over my shoulder and saying, you need to write this because this will sell better, or it's more or less complete freedom. And then, if publishers in the UK or the US want to buy these books and do them in English, that's fine. But they're always written, originally just for fun.
But that has changed for you now, hasn't it? Because your career's exploded. Like, you're absolutely everywhere. You're an international bestseller. You're in all the countries. Like, has that brought pressure? Have you felt that? You must have.
No pressure. It's still, I always still write for Iceland. Although I've just published a book in France ahead of Iceland. It was the first time I've published a book outside of Iceland first.
Wow.
But again, that was still just the book I wanted to write. There was still no pressure, which I think is good. I wouldn't want the pressure of an agent or a publisher, sort of ruining the magic.
Yeah. Are you not seen as a traitor now inside of Iceland?
No.
First, they're chasing you down the street.
Oh, there's just like 1 month in between publication in France and Iceland, so it's almost. And,
okay.
Not so, we don't have a lot of French-speaking people in Iceland, considering. So for them, the Icelandic version is quite brand new.
Right, okay. And so you wrote that in French?
No, in Icelandic.
Okay, and then something, yeah.
But it...
And then you translate your own book. Yes, that'd be amazing. Yeah, that's incredible.
No, it's not within my capabilities.
That'd be one of the few things that isn't in your capabilities, my friend. So how have you found it then, the pandemic? You said you were writing 2 books at a time. Are you just incredibly bored?
Some days it gets a bit too much, but as long as I have my computer and I can sit down and I find ways to fill my time with writing. I'm doing like a short story now as well, and just like a golden age short story.
Nice.
So it's like all sorts of stuff that I never run out of ideas yet. So
yeah, I think I was talking to John Connelly a while back, who was saying that's the misunderstanding outside of the job, right? That people think the ideas are the problem, and it's not the time that's the problem.
It is the time. That is true. Yeah.
Which I guess pandemic's given us back a little bit. It's like
a little bit, yeah. Although I miss the traveling, I miss I miss seeing readers. I miss, I wish I were like at the bookstore. Actually, now I wish I was in the US. It's been I haven't been to the US obviously for like almost a year now, and that's a shame. I mean, I really want to go back.
It is hard, isn't it? Because at this point you're just seeing, we do events like this, you're just seeing other authors, you're seeing bookstore owners and moderators, but you're not seeing the audience. You can't make that connection that you can when you can stand up in front of people and you can read the room and answer questions, and you get, it's a nice thing. It's a piece of, I describe it as a bit of stand-up. It feels like a piece of stand-up when you've done it enough, that it's all about making that connection with the people in the room and sort of understanding what they want and tailoring the sort of event towards that. Some people they're more interested in the process of writing. Other people want the funny stories behind the book. Other people are obsessed with the book and just want to know more about it. And
exactly.
Yeah, it's hard to do that when it's just you and me having a chat from our living rooms.
Yeah, it's different. Very different. I was supposed to be at this bookstore like a year ago, and I wasn't able to travel from Iceland at that point because things were too busy. And now I just wish I'd been there. But next year maybe. Next year.
Oh God, we all hope so. Like, it's just, it's a funny, not to get too maudlin about it, but it's been interesting to see what we all miss and what we all took for granted. And I know that as soon as travel comes back and there's vaccines out there and stuff, it'll take about 2 months and we'll take it all for granted again, because that's just
I know.
people.
I know. That is very true.
But I'm going to book about 47 holidays immediately.
So will I. So what's the deal with like TV adaptation of? I think you sold the rights to the first one at least.
Yeah, so that was going really. Yeah, so 7 Deaths got sold. I never know where we're at that. It's with a big producer, big streamer. It got delayed by the pandemic, like everything else did.
Yeah.
But that's sat with them. They've got scripts and cast and all that stuff is happening.
Okay.
So that's there. And then I don't quite know how it's been affected by the pandemic. I don't know what it's done to the budget and all the other things. And then Devil is out now, and we're talking to a couple of people about Devil.
Okay.
But it's the problem with Devil is that 7 Deaths is set in a country house.
Yeah, it's easier.
Yeah, much easier. This one's at sea, which is always a complicated thing. So finding people who want to do it, because God, I make it sound like I've got more control than I do here. But there's been some talk about, it could be done as a series maybe, but I don't know how well that'd work for this sort of story. Like, I feel like I think it'd probably work better as a movie if we could get that made, but that would be incredibly costly, which makes it less attractive to people. So who knows, mate? It's out, and you know what it's like. You must have had options on all your books. Like, it just is a thing that seems to sometimes automatically happen, and then it drifts off somewhere, and sporadically you'll get a royalty check or something.
Still, I'd love to see it. I mean, I think the Evelyn Hardcastle would make like lovely Christmas viewing.
Yeah, so would that.
Agatha Christie type of stuff.
Can you imagine how big that cast would have to be, though?
Yeah.
Like, we'd need to draft in, like the Harry Potter movies all over again. We'd have to draft in every actor who was currently working to populate the cast. But it's hard, isn't it? Because I generally don't write with an eye to adaptation. I write books that I don't think would work particularly well as movies or television, because if I thought they'd work like that, that's how I'd write them, if that makes sense. I would just go write a script. I would go and write a screenplay or a piece of theatre if I thought that was the best medium for the story. So I'm constantly trying to tell stories that work better as books, because I love language. I love beautiful writing in books. Like, I want people to enjoy the crispness of the writing when they're reading one of my books, because I take pleasure from that myself as a reader. And you work and as adaptations, you do lose that. You lose the language automatically. You lose the thing that makes a book. You just take the plot and you pull it over, and the characters and the dialogue. So yeah, I was not that I'm skeptical about adaptations, but I would love somebody just to take them and do something nuts with them. Like, just really go off-piste with them. Like, just not change the plot completely, but do things, rectify my mistakes in the books, basically, and take them in a different direction. So even I was surprised. I would love that. That would make me so happy.
So are you like, you're writing full time now, or? Yeah,
very privileged. Yeah, so I've been doing that since about halfway through 7 Deaths. It became viable to do that, and I don't think I would have been able to write the second book if I'd been doing another job at some, again, because of the newborn baby and trying to write and losing that year. I think if I was trying to do it alongside being still a journalist, I would still be writing that book, because it requires so much attention and concentration. And I spend my mornings editing the stuff that I did the day before. So I write in the afternoon, I edit in the morning, and it's a full edit. So I throw away as many words as I write every single day. So it's really slow. I'm a really, really slow writer, and I'm really sort of methodical in the way I would go about the work. So if that one little thing isn't doing exactly the thing that I think it should be doing, I can't leave it alone until it is. I can't just put it down on page and then come back to it 6 months later, which is, again, makes everything. But I feel so sorry for my editor and my publishers. They're just like, just get us a copy. Like, Devil missed 5 deadlines, I think.
Yeah, I followed that quite closely with Harry.
I
was just always asking, like, when's Stu's new book coming out? It's coming soon. It's like next year. 2 years from now.
We should explain that Harry's my agent, and he is a terrible human being, but he shouldn't have been put through what I put him through with this book, because he was the one who had to go to my publishers and explain that I was going to miss that deadline as well, and that deadline. I think by the end of it, he was just like, right, you're going to have to go and tell them now, because it's been so many. Oh, dear, poor Harry. It must have been. He's a lot grayer, I think, now, after 2 years of waiting for Devil to come through. But hopefully that shouldn't happen again. Like now, I think Devil's taught me how to write books, in the sense that it's taught me the process that I need to go through and what's the most efficient for me to actually write. So hopefully this should be, I should start getting these things out a little bit quicker than I have been, but still not too.
Okay. Oh, excellent. So another one next year?
Very ambitious, my friend. But yeah, less than 2.5 years, I would hope, for the next one. Yeah,
Okay.
Slightly too long for me. Yeah.
What are you reading now?
I am currently reading 8 Detectives by Alex Pavesi.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah, I'm really, really enjoying it. So I'm doing an event with him on Wednesday. I'm just getting to the end of that book, and it's a joy. It's an absolute.
It is, yeah.
It's wonderful. So I just highly recommend it to anyone who's not read it. I think everyone's read it by this point, apart from me. But it's just fantastic. And again, it's a different interpretation of what you can do with a mystery novel and how clever you can be with it and where that cleverness lies, while still having a perfect structure and a brilliant sort of what I think is going to be a brilliant ending. Like I'm getting there. And
it is, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really, really enjoying that. So I've got that on the go. And what did I just finish? I just finished Leave the World Behind, which I can't remember the author of it, but it's getting a lot of hype, and the movie rights have already been sold, and it's going to star, I think, Julia Roberts and Denzel Washington are going to star in it. So it's that, but there's that book every year. This is that, but it's excellent. It's I highly recommend that as well, and that's incredibly creepy without a great deal of creepy things happening, if that makes sense. It's a perfect exercise in building tension and making you feel uncomfortable. You're just sat there reading it and you're just waiting. You're just waiting all the time for something to happen. So yeah, I've been really, really lucky with books recently. Oh, and I just finished The Last Thing to Burn by Will Dean. I don't know if you've read that yet, but that is that's also fantastic. That's his new standalone, and that was just wonderful. And just every page from the first page of that book is tense. Like he's one of those authors, for me, he hasn't written a bad book yet. Like he's excellent at telling you in 2 pages what he's going to do and then executing it absolutely magnificently. And this is that again. So I'd recommend that as well. It's just brilliant, brilliant book.
How about as we mentioned Agatha Christie earlier, what's your favorite Christie?
It's really hard. I think this changes. I don't know if you're the same. This changes on my mood. And like the last one I read, I love Crooked House.
Mm-hmm.
But the first one I ever read, I think, was A Murder is Announced, which I just think has got the best hook of a mystery that I've ever had. And for anyone who doesn't know it, and I assume everyone in this crowd probably knows it, it's about somebody, we don't know who, puts an announcement in the local paper telling everyone when and where a murder will be committed. And then, so lo and behold, a bunch of people turn up at that place to watch a murder committed, and then the plot spirals off from there. And I always say this, like Agatha Christie is now cemented as like just this iconic figure, right? But she's not really a person anymore. She's just a person who spat out great mysteries one after another. And it's quite hard to see her as human, as somebody, but I imagine her having that idea and just realizing then she had to go and write it, and how terrifying that would be, because the idea is so good you have to write it, but you'd have no idea of how to do it successfully or how to get to that conclusion or how to make it actually work. It would have been the worst feeling in the world. You must have like wished it on another author so you could just read it and enjoy it or criticize it. But lo and behold, she had the idea and she had to go and do it. And I love the ambition of it. And I don't think that's something she gets credit enough for ever. Just the ambition of her books and how she takes these wild swings throughout the genre of what the genre can be and the perspective she's so using. Like, it's just absolutely wonderful. It's either that one or there's a Poirot, and the title of it I always forget. But it's like a Murder in Apartment 4B or something, and it's the one where Poirot hears a noise downstairs, goes down to his neighbours downstairs, discovers there's a body in there, and there's these like 3 or 4 guilty-looking young people, and he just does a circle around the apartment, works out what happened, lays the finger of blame on someone, and then walks out again. And the entire book is about 5 pages.
It's a third floor flat.
Third floor flat, that's the one, and it's phenomenal. It's everything that Poirot is good at in a short story, and it's just wonderful. Like all the characters are perfect, the deductions are perfect, the mystery is really genuinely mystifying, but has an awesome conclusion, and it just never loses its way. There's no padding on it at all. It's the perfect encapsulation of a Poirot mystery for me. So I adore that. What about you?
I think The Murder of Roger Ackroyd is the perfect novel. I mean, it's the perfect mystery. I mean, it's probably not my favorite of them all, but it's the book you would want to have written. I mean, it's so clever and so original for its time. But I think my favorite is, I often say it's Murder on the Links. Very early Poirot. But there's something just very charming about it. That's Poirot and Hastings together in France, and it's. I think for me, I mean, I love rereading that book.
Yeah, it's got tons of atmosphere, that book, hasn't it? That's what I remember about it. Like, it's got some of Christie's works. They're all plot, and there's not a lot around them. There's just plot and some ciphers, but that book is one of the ones where she spends a lot of time on sort of the environment and where they are and sort of how things and the manners around them and stuff. And you just get a genuine sense of being in that place. She does that. You notice it occasionally. Some things like Death on the Nile as well does that, where you can tell that she's fascinated by the place as much as she is. There's later books where she's just got another country house where she's just like, I don't care. Like, you know what this is like by this point, and she has no interest in it. And that's another thing in reading those novels. You can see the novels where she was genuinely inspired and genuinely invested and interested in the writing, and the novels where maybe she had a plot and she had to get a novel out, and they're just kind of very perfunctory kind of novels. Like Hickory, is it called Hickory Dickory Dock? Well, that is just like, it's just a list of interviews. She just turns up and just interviews a person one after another, and you're like, yeah, that was your third book that year, wasn't it? That's the one where you lost interest.
So I think we have some questions from the audience as well. Shall we?
Yes, we do. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So we have some questions about process, but before we get to those, just a reminder, if you tuned in late, you can come right back here to the live tab on the Murder by the Book Facebook page and watch the video from the beginning as soon as it's done. And at the end of the week, I will also upload all of our virtual events to YouTube, so you can check it out there or share it from YouTube later on. So we, as I said, questions about process. So Troy was wondering if you guys have a specific place that you like to write, and then also kind of generally, what does your day look, excuse me, what does your day look like on a writing day? Do you write in the morning? Do you write in the evenings? How's that look?
Ragnar, after you.
Yeah, so I would usually definitely not write in the morning. I would write in the evening, late in the evening, usually when everyone's asleep. And I mean, I just quite strictly write something every day. That's the way to get through a book, I feel. If you take a break, it tends to be the break tends to be a little bit longer than you thought. So it's just every day a little bit, whatever's going on. And I would usually just write in here. I'll show you. So yeah, this is where
the magic happens.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's, but in a normal year I would probably write quite a bit on an airplane as well, because that's a quiet place when you need to travel a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I tend to write a lot trains and aeroplanes and public transport of all sorts. So I've got a very little laptop that I take around just for that purpose, because they're quite easy to unfold in like little seats and stuff wherever I am. I write in the mornings. As I said yesterday, I write in the afternoon and I edit in the morning, and then that's my work day every single day. And I find that by editing in the morning, it kind of gets me back into the flow of the book and sort of like what I was at and what the characters are feeling. It allows me to sort of read over what I was doing yesterday, and editing it makes me engage with it again, which is very useful to me, because sometimes I can feel a little bit detached. If I have to go back into a blank page, I can find that quite difficult. I have absolutely nowhere to write. Me and my wife and my family, we've lived a very chaotic life for the last few years. We've lived in a lot of different places. And so we're currently in a tiny little rented cottage, and I write in the corner of our bedroom in a tiny little compressed space. So finally we're going to move very soon. But same as Ragnar, I know a lot of writers say things like this. They're very invested in sort of where they write and what that's about, and that's the least important thing. Like you just got to write. It doesn't matter where it happens. If you're worried about the noise, stick a pair of headphones on. You've just got to sit down, get some words on the page, and then where that happens is kind of irrelevant ultimately. If you've got somewhere nice to write, that's wonderful. That is absolutely brilliant. But if you need inspiration, like, just go for a walk.
Yeah. So we have a very specific question from Marissa. She was wondering, she says she's reading Devil now and has a question about Crais. I don't know how to pronounce it either. The question is, how do you pronounce her name?
Yes, this is awful. I don't really know. So I got all the names of the characters from my research. So I went and sat in the British Library, and I read through the passenger manifests of ships that were sailing in this period, these specific types of ships. And I took a lot of the names from those passenger manifests. So I've never had to say them out loud until I started doing interviews to promote the book. And people are like, so how do you say it? I'm like, I don't know. I've never said it. So I heard it said on the audiobook, and it was Crais, with a sort of very Dutch thing happening somewhere in there. So Crais, I believe. But in my head, it's just Creasy. It's the simplest way to get through it. But I'm terrified that I'm going to have to go to the Netherlands and do like a little event there, and I'll just screw up every one of these names.
Fair enough. So both of you write, as you mentioned earlier, pretty detailed outlines before you get going. So I think this question actually works for both of you. Julie was wondering if you find, as you're writing clues, that they look glaringly obvious to you and you think everyone will immediately see right through them.
Ragnar?
Sometimes. And what happens is sometimes you go the other way, and you actually make the clue so obscure that no one really ever notices it. No matter how many languages the book's translated into. So I have a few of those as well.
I try to thread my clues. So I try to make sure that they're in the dialogue and then have physical objects that are clues. And I always try to, so my technique for this is that I don't ever have red herrings necessarily. What I do is I make sure every one of the characters in my book has a secret and has something that they are personally pursuing. And then I thread clues to those mysteries through the novel alongside the clues to the main mystery. So the idea is that you're basically getting an overabundance of clues, and they're all important, but they're all pointing in different directions. And then what I like to do, just to be mischievous, is I use my dialogue for sort of the red herrings. So people will talk about things and they'll imply things heavily in dialogue that don't actually go anywhere because it's just people talking about something. And I want the reader to get to that point where they're basically paranoid and they're hugely inspecting the novel for every little clue and every little line. And they're sort of so they're making their own red herrings as they go along. So to answer the question, yeah, you can absolutely think something. But then I've discovered only 2 novels in already that glaringly obvious clues are generally only glaringly obvious to yourself. Where the readers are all my readers always seem to be looking at something else. They're always picking up on a detail that I had not foreseen. So I think you can go a long way with a glaring the obvious clue.
Yeah, well, half the book is what we bring to it, so as readers. So I'm sure that's true. Julie also wanted to know what the phrase Ragnar struggled to translate in Lord Edgware was.
Oh, yes. At the risk of, giving too much away about an old Agatha Christie book, it has to do with the words he and she, which when translated into Icelandic and probably any Scandinavian language, the clue really just doesn't work. So it's all, it's all very linked to the English language. So it took me years to decide to go and, translate that book, because it had never been translated into Icelandic before. And it was like, it's a lovely Christie. So I went, looked at, other translations from like Norway and stuff like that. And there was no really good solution to this. So I think I ended up using like a footnote or something to just explain it.
Wow.
Oh, that must have been like, it would have been brilliant getting to that point though, and then just like Ragnar just appears and he's like, "Hi everybody." At this point in the novel, I just need to. That would have been very, very nice.
Asterisk. See footnote. Yeah. So we also have another question. If I can find it, sorry, something just popped up and now there it is. Okay. So do you enjoy writing in the golden age because there's less technology to do all the work for the detectives? And does it give you more freedom to tackle more controversial issues, needing perhaps to be less politically correct than a modern setting? There's a lot to unpack there. Why do you enjoy your golden age settings?
I enjoy them because, yeah, I like the lack of technology. I like the research more than anything else. So I wrote Seven Deaths in the 20s because that's when Agatha Christie wrote the novels that I enjoyed the most. That sort of 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s period I was just evoking her. And then when I came to write Devil, the setting was everything. So I had the boat first, and the boat. This book is the inspiration for it was a real life shipwreck that happened in 1629. So I had the year already decided for me by the inspiration for the book, and I wanted to be on a ship. And everything about the real life story I wanted to bring in to my novel. So I didn't want the actual story because the story is too horrific. The real life story is brutal and terrible. But the atmosphere, a ship at sea in 1634 or 1629 is effectively a haunted house. It's a haunted house at sea. It is a perfect location for a book. And I just wanted that so badly. So it was nothing to do with, I wasn't even thinking about technology, to be honest. And maybe it won't be my next novel, but the novel after that could be more contemporary. I think it's just about finding the right setting for the story you're telling. I think that's all it actually is.
So we have a couple people who were kind of wondering if you could drop some hints about the next novel. And then you already touched on this. Someone asked if you would ever write a contemporary mystery. Maybe skip the next one.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've started thinking I'm writing book 3 now, and I can't say much about it because it's very early doors, but it's crazy. It is, I think it's just, I'm a bit worried about it, which is a nice place because I was worried about Seven Deaths before I started that, and I was worried about Devil before I started that because I wasn't sure whether I could mix up the genres that I was trying to mix up or tell the story I was trying to tell. So I think that's a good place to start a novel from, just absolute terror. That's where I am right now. But it's going to be, if I do the thing that I'm thinking about doing, it will be just off the charts odd. And it's not been done before, and it's going to make the mystery. It could be brilliant. It could be brilliant. I just wish I wasn't the one writing it. I wish somebody better was doing it. So there's that, and then so the fourth book after that could be. I've got a little idea for that, and that could be a bit more contemporary, but again with a twist. So I would write it, but I'd need the right idea.
So do either of you have specific techniques that you use when plotting your novels?
Ragnar?
Not really. It's sort of just, just comes to me and I try and write it down somewhere. My only technique is if I have an idea when I'm, outside walking or wherever, I just send an email to myself with a headline, an idea. And then at some point when I run out of ideas, I'll just go into my email box and find all these lost ideas. But it's like, there is no order to it. It's just complete chaos. It's just, the ideas they just arrive.
How about you, Stu?
Not really. I mean, my only technique is to try not to write a shit book. It's a very basic thing, but if at any point I feel that the book is drifting towards being, if I start writing a book that I feel that somebody else could have written, I will immediately try and shy away from that and write the book that I think only I could write. That's my guiding principle, because I always want to use tropes. I love tropes. Tropes are inbuilt red herrings in the audience. So I try to use them, and I always try to shift them around so they don't lead you where you think you're going to go with them. They don't take you in the usual direction. So when I'm planning a novel, I'm just constantly trying to plan one that is going to thwart your expectation or is going to do something slightly different than you want it to do. And sometimes that's not possible, and just for narrative flow, you need to put something in there that doesn't do that. But I'm always trying to sort of like slightly think about the reader and think about what I would be expecting, because I know mystery novels and I know what the expectations usually are, and then I try and do something that subverts that expectation. So again, it can be quite a meta thing, because you're trying to outthink yourself at every single stage of plot. It's no wonder I'm this grey at this age. It's just no way to live, honestly.
So I have a question. Do either of you have a favorite motive for murder?
Definitely want Ragnar to go first with that one.
Oh, that's a good question. Actually, the first book that comes to mind, I really don't know why, is Agatha Christie's After the Funeral, and I won't tell you the motive because that would sort of ruin the book. But that was quite original and quite dark.
How about in your own writing? Do you tend to have financial gain or love or lust or revenge?
It's a little bit of everything. I mean, not a lot of financial gain. I think it's more interesting if it's sort of more raw in a way. That murder happens not completely planned out beforehand, but just because it happens, because people are like driven to the edge. And I live in a country where the climate is can be crazy, and people live in these small isolated places and in the darkness, and so these elements are usually the ones that push you over the edge in my books.
Yeah, I quite like. I haven't done it, but I quite like the idea of like guilt and sort of like, so when you've done something ridiculous, so like you've committed a murder, but it was completely by accident, and then the characters who are trying to cover it up will keep digging themselves deeper and deeper and deeper in until eventually they have to commit another murder, and they're that deep in that the third murder becomes that much easier. Those sorts of plots where it's just like almost like a Coen Brothers movie where it just keeps escalating, snowballing. I'm a sucker for those sorts of stories. Like, I absolutely love them. But the problem with those in mystery novels is you kind of have to put them front and center. Like, there's no real mystery to it because you have to kind of put it up the top of the book and then follow the character down this. I think it can make for an unsatisfying explanation at the end of a book. As Ragnar said, like, the ones that make for the best explanations are generally quite punchy. Like, why did you do it? Or because somebody was about to find out a secret I had, or because someone was about to set my fortune away. It almost needs to be delivered in a single line as a motive. And as you were saying, like, I think it's very rare that murder's committed so simply and for such a simple thing. Like, there's usually an escalation and building tension and a fraying of the faculties, and then a murder happens. But that is a terrible thing to write on the sort of like 500th page of your book.
Yeah. So since Ragnar was gracious enough to join us for your new book release, I would like to give him a chance to tell us both a little bit about the Dark Iceland series and the Hulda series, if you don't mind, Ragnar.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we have the Dark Iceland series, the one you have there. Snowblind is the first one there. And that's set in the northernmost town in Iceland called Siglufjörður. It's the place where my father grew up, where my grandparents lived. And it's this picture-perfect small town that when I started writing, I thought, this is the place I need to use because it's isolated. It has a lot of snow in the winter, and it's just a lovely place to visit. So I decided to use that. And then we have the Hulda series, where the Mist is the third and final book about Hulda. And that's a slightly, more, maybe more contemporary, I don't know, but it's although it's set throughout like 3 decades, but the trick with the Hulda series is that it starts at the end. So in the first book, she's 64 years old, and then she gets younger in each book. So we follow her life in reverse order. So we know throughout, when you read book 3, you know much more about her life than she does at that point, if you've read the books as they were written. Yeah, so that's those are the books, and we're hoping to get Hulda to the TV screens, because it's just been announced that CBS are doing like a series based on that. So I hope we can see her come to life soon.
That'll be so good. That'll be so good.
And it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, both of these authors are highly recommended by us at Murder by the Book, and we have hand-sold so many of their books. We highly recommend them. So if you haven't tried them, you're tuning in because these virtual author events are so easy to just meet new authors. We would definitely recommend giving them a shot. As I said earlier, we have signed book plates for Devil in the Dark Water. We have both of Ragnar's series in stock, and we also have 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle in stock too. I just only have so many spots to pose books here. I think that's probably going to end our conversation today. Thank you both so much for your time and effort joining us. I heard you mention that it was sad that you didn't make it to Houston last year, and we feel the same. So you're both obviously welcome anytime, Ragnar. We'd love to have you when it's safe and possible. Thank you again for watching, and everyone have a great evening.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.